My family called me just the Welder, until my patents bankrupted their golden son-in-law. Hi, I'm Teddy, 33. And 2 months ago, my entire family found out I'm not just the guy who fixes dents and grills stuff. I'm the man who owns the patent portfolio that bankrupted my genius brother-in-law. They wanted to laugh at my welding shop until I lit a fire under their ego and let the truth burn. Let me set the scene. My family never took me seriously. I'm the blue-collar son, the welder with grease on his boots and a truck that still plays CDs. I married my high school sweetheart, Maddie. She's the kind of woman who smells like lavender and says things like, "Grab a jacket, baby," before a storm hits. She runs a small landscaping business, makes magic with dirt and clippers. We've been together 10 years, built a little life on 3 acres of land and hard work. Meanwhile, my sister Layla married golden boy Trent. MBA, investment banker, almond milk drinking, bespoke suit wearing Trent. My parents adore him. He talks in graphs. Smells like cologne and arrogance. They brag about his vision. Me? They smile like I'm an okay backup plan. When Trent bought Layla a Tesla, they called it romantic. When I built Maddie a greenhouse by hand for her birthday, they asked if I couldn't have just gotten her a gift card. It's always been like that. Dinners with them feel like interviews I didn't prepare for. Maddie plays it cool. She sips her wine and lets them talk over her, but I see her flinch every time someone calls her down to earth. Like it's a diagnosis. Then came the cookout. Dad's 65th. Everyone showed up with wine bottles and fake stories. I brought my smoker trailer and did brisket for 12 hours. When Maddie and I rolled up with the food, people clapped like I was the help arriving. The turning point came during dessert. Layla raised her glass and said, "Let's all toast to Trent, who just closed a $12 million portfolio shift and secured a board seat at Capital Horizon. We're so proud of you, babe." Everyone cheered. Then Dad looked at me and said, "And Teddy made a mailbox recently, right? What was it? Dragon-shaped?" I smiled. "Nah. Just a chemical-resistant outdoor bench prototype for municipal parks." "Oh," he said, and sipped his wine. "Still doing that little side project?" That little side project was already worth more than Trent's house. But I didn't say a word yet. Maddie squeezed my hand under the table. "Let them talk," she whispered. What they didn't know, I'd spent the last 5 years building a specialized alloy coating that made metal resistant to corrosion in extreme environments. I had 4 patents under a shell company, Oakline Materials, and a licensing deal with an aerospace supplier. Trent had no idea. Hell, I'd bet he'd shorted the sector just for fun. Until 6 weeks later, when everything imploded. The collapse came fast. First, a LinkedIn post from a mid-sized tech investor I followed. Market corrections are savage when arrogance steers the ship. No names, but I had a feeling. Then the calls started, Layla asking if we could chat. Dad texting cryptically about family unity. Mom asking if Maddie and I were free for dinner. Soon, maybe this week. Something was off. Maddie and I were in the greenhouse when the truth came out. My cousin Nate, bless him, the family's reluctant gossip, called, voice low and urgent. "You sitting down?" he asked. I was literally crouched over a tomato bed, but I said yeah. "Trent's hedge fund? Imploded. Like scorched earth. SEC's sniffing around. Half his investors are threatening to sue." I stood up so fast I knocked over a planter. "Wait, what?" He leveraged a massive short against some startup he called All Bark and Spreadsheets. Apparently, it was in aerospace materials. "You know anything about that?" My stomach dropped. Maddie looked at me. "Teddy?" I whispered. "I think he bet against my company." See, Oakline Materials, the company with my patents, wasn't under my name. It was in Maddie's maiden name for privacy and leverage. Trent had no idea. To him, Oakline was just another upstart trying to play with the big dogs. So he bet big. Millions. Thinking he could make a fortune when it failed. Only, we didn't fail. My coating tech was adopted in March by a major defense contractor for field equipment. Licensing revenue had tripled. Oakline had just crossed the $9.5 million valuation. Trent had thrown a bomb and it blew up in his own lap. That weekend, my parents called an emergency family meeting. To discuss options, Mom said. "Trent's in a difficult place, and we need to come together." Maddie looked at me, eyebrow raised. "Define options." We both knew. We showed up that Sunday with coffee and calm faces. Layla was already crying in the living room. Trent looked like a Wall Street ghost, pale, sweaty, designer socks but no shoes. Dad didn't waste time. Teddy, he began. This is hard for us to say. Trent made some risky moves. I know, I said. He blinked. You do? I nodded. I know exactly what he did. Trent looked up. Then you know how bad this is. The lawsuits, the exposure. I need capital. Fast. Liquid. Mom jumped in, clasping her hands. Your father and I were hoping you could help. The land, your shop, maybe you could sell it. It would mean everything. Maddie's face didn't change, but I saw her eyes go sharp. She took my hand under the table. I leaned back and said, let me get this straight. You want me to liquidate my assets, to bail out the guy who bet against my company? Silence. Trent frowned. What do you mean, your company? I reached into my backpack and laid a single manila folder on the table. Maddie had labeled it. Just in case. I opened it. First page, the original patent application for the corrosion-resistant alloy coating. Second, the incorporation papers for Oakline Materials. Third, a screenshot of Trent's hedge fund filings. Public record. The biggest short position? Oakline Materials. Trent stared at the page. Then at me. You're Oakline, he whispered. No, I said. I'm Teddy. The welder. The simple guy with dirt under his nails. Oakline is just what I built when nobody was looking. Dad stood up. You mean to tell me? I mean to tell you, I interrupted, that the man you trusted with your retirement bet against your own son, and lost. And now you want me to clean it up? Nobody said a word. Maddie reached into her tote and pulled out a thermos. Poured herself tea. I said, you thought I was the safety net. I'm not. I'm the boundary. This is where the whole story cracked open like a rusted hinge. We were still sitting at my parents' kitchen table, Trent pale and rattled, Layla sniffling, Mom halfway between denial and panic, when my father slammed his palm on the table. You always do this, he barked. You hoard your little projects, you sit on secrets, and then when your family needs you. I built a business, I said, my voice low. While you were laughing at the Dragon mailbox, I was working until 3 a.m. in a cold shop, trying to solve metal fatigue at the molecular level. Trent didn't lose because I failed to help, he lost because he was arrogant enough to bet against me. Trent stood. You can't talk to me like that. Sure I can. You're not my boss. You're the guy who shorted my company without realizing I am the company. Layla turned to Maddie. You knew? Maddie nodded. From day one. I'm on the IP filings. You think he kept that quiet from me? Layla looked stunned. You mean that money, that company, that's real? I grabbed the last page in the folder. Oakline's most recent valuation confirmed and stamped by an independent third-party analyst. $9. $5 million. I slid it across the table. You bet the family farm on Trent. But the real equity? You ignored it. Because it didn't wear a Rolex or drink espresso. Trent stared at the number like it physically hurt him. You ruined me. No, I said. Your ego did that. You looked at me and saw a welder. You didn't see the chemist in the shop after hours. You didn't see the R&D I paid for with side jobs and no sleep. Dad was quiet now. Hands and fists jaw locked. You're not going to help us, he said. I shook my head. I'm not going to save you. Mom's voice cracked. But we're your family. You remember that now? You didn't think about family when you laughed at Maddie for driving a Ford. You didn't think about family when you bragged about Trent buying your condo while I paid for your medical deductibles. You only think about family when it benefits you. And then Maddie, who'd been calm the whole time, finally spoke. You know what's funny? She said. Your son just saved American manufacturers tens of millions in rust damage repairs, and all you can think about is how fast he can bail out your son-in-law. Then she turned to me. You don't owe them your work, your house, or your peace. I nodded slowly. I know. I stood, picked up the folder, and said, This meeting is over. You'll hear from my lawyer if any of you try to pressure me again. I turned to leave, and Layla snapped. You think this is over? You think you can just turn your back on us? I didn't even look back. I just said, I didn't turn my back. I finally faced forward. We walked out of that house, Maddie and me, hand in hand. I didn't know what the fallout would be. But I did know one thing. Trent had bet big on my failure and lost. And he wasn't done trying to collect what he thought I owed. We expected drama. But not legal drama. 2 days after that showdown at my parents' house, a courier dropped a thick envelope at our gate. Maddie thought it was another licensing contract. I knew better. The envelope was too heavy. Too smug. Inside, a formal letter from a law firm representing Trent and Layla. They were formally requesting the initiation of asset liquidation discussions to fulfill urgent familial obligations. Translation? They were trying to force me to sell my shop and property to clean up the crater Trent had left behind. I stood in the kitchen reading it, lips pressed tight. Maddie read over my shoulder. They think they can sue you into saving them? She said, incredulous. They think I won't fight back. I said. Because I never have. She handed me my phone. Call Darren. Darren was our lawyer. Former engineer turned corporate litigator. The kind of guy who used to weld on weekends until someone tried to steal his patent, and he turned into a lawsuit-slinging beast. We'd hired him when Oakline got real traction. I forwarded him the letter. 10 minutes later, he FaceTimed us, grinning. Please, for the love of God, he said, let me handle this. I haven't had this much fun since a roofing supplier tried to copyright the phrase weatherproof AF. Can they actually do anything? Maddie asked. Darren laughed. No. You transferred the land into Oakline's asset trust 2 years ago, remember? It's not yours anymore legally, it belongs to a corporate entity. Any attempt to force a sale will get laughed out of court. But if they try anything, we countersue. Harassment. Defamation. Maybe even attempted fraud if they misrepresent anything. Maddie leaned back, impressed. I love you when you get scary. He winked. I'm filing a cease and desist today. Let them swing. I hung up, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, power. Not power over them, power from them. From finally having proof, leverage, and clarity. I didn't need revenge. I needed distance. But Trent wasn't done. Oh no. The next week, he launched a smear campaign on social media. Fake accounts trashing Oakline's technology. Posts about dangerous materials and environmental concerns. Even a half-baked blog accusing Oakline of copying patented European techniques. He tried to tank my company in public, hoping the bad press would kill our valuation and keep him from being exposed as a guy who shorted a rocket ship. Only problem? We were clean. I published every environmental compliance certificate. Every material test. Every patent timestamp. The internet flipped on him. Comments flooded in. Engineers, developers, even environmental scientists I'd worked with, all backing me. Calling his claims laughable and bitter ex-investor nonsense. Within 48 hours, his entire campaign backfired. Oakline's site traffic doubled. Inquiries surged. One aerospace exec even emailed me. Hey, we saw that drama online. Can we talk about a deal? Maddie and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, her head on my shoulder. He tried to ruin you, she said. No, I said. He tried to ruin a version of me that no longer exists. The old Teddy? The quiet one? The family doormat? That guy was gone. The final confrontation didn't happen in a courtroom or some polished office. It happened in my damn shop, the one with the steel dust on the floor and the hum of machines that don't lie. It was a Thursday morning. Rain tapping the tin roof. I was welding a stair frame for a local brewery when I saw a flash of Lexus headlights in the gravel outside. I lifted my mask. Wiped my face. Trent. He got out, dressed like Wall Street hadn't just eaten him alive. Tailored coat, but the shine was gone. Under his arm? A leather folder. The guy didn't even bring an umbrella. Just entitlement. He walked in like he still owned the narrative. The smell of desperation hit before his cologne did. Teddy, he said. We need to talk. No, you need to leave, I said, turning back to my workbench. I came alone. No lawyers. No threats. He held up a hand like we were about to negotiate a peace treaty. Just hear me out. I didn't say anything. Just waited. He exhaled, shifting on his feet. I messed up, he said. I was arrogant. I underestimated you. I thought Oakline was just another noise startup, and I saw an opportunity. A big one. You saw an opportunity, I repeated. To gut your wife's brother. I didn't know it was you. He snapped. If I had. What? I cut in. If you had known it was me, you wouldn't have bet against it? Or you would have bet harder because you thought I couldn't possibly pull it off? Silence. Then, softly, you weren't supposed to win. That landed like a hammer. He looked around the shop at the CNC, the design sketches, the early prototypes still hung up like trophies. This isn't what I thought it was, he said, almost to himself. No, I replied. It's better. Trent opened the folder. I've drafted a statement. A public apology. I'll admit to everything shorting the company, spreading lies, trying to manipulate the market. In exchange, I want a personal loan. Just enough to stay out of prison. I walked over and flipped the folder shut. No, Teddy. You tried to bankrupt me, I said quietly. You tried to erase what I built because you couldn't comprehend that someone like me could succeed without your approval. He was shaking now. Hands curled into fists. You think you're better than me? No, I said. I know I wasn't and still did better anyway. Then I nodded toward the door. I'll give you one gift, I won't press charges. But if you ever show up here again, that changes. He stood there, breathing hard. Face red. No more comebacks. No more charm. Just a man staring at the end of his influence. You were supposed to be the one asking for help, he said, bitter. I was, I said. Then I built a better story. He walked out without another word. Rain falling like punctuation. And I let him go. For good. I thought that would be the end of it. Trent humiliated, Oakline stronger than ever, and me back to my peaceful life with Maddie and steel beams. But life has a way of echoing, especially in families where the walls are thin and the wounds go way back. By Saturday, the calls started. First, Layla. I didn't answer. Then Mom. Then Dad. I ignored all of them until my cousin Becca sent a single message. Brace yourself. They're calling it a betrayal. And just like that, the narrative began to twist. Suddenly I wasn't the son who built a multi-million-dollar materials tech company from scratch. I was the brother who turned his back on family in their time of need. I was selfish, petty, ungrateful. Ungrateful for what, exactly? The phone rang again. I picked up. Hey Becca. She sighed. They're spinning it hard. Saying you refused to help Trent when everyone was struggling. Your mom's been crying on the family chat. Layla posted some half-baked essay about being betrayed by blood. Maddie overheard and snorted. Did she include pictures of her $600 espresso machine? Becca continued. Your dad, he's saying things like Teddy used the family as a launchpad and now wants to pretend we never existed. I laughed short, bitter. I funded my business by selling hand-forged furniture on Etsy and welding fences for a guy who paid me in firewood. I know, she said quietly. I know. I sat there for a moment, staring at the stained concrete floor of my shop. The same floor where I'd nearly electrocuted myself installing the first prototype rig. Where Maddie brought me soup on nights I worked until 4 a.m. This place was the launch pad. But it wasn't built from family support, it was built in spite of family dismissal. I finally said. They're trying to change the ending. But I'm not giving them the pen. Becca paused. Then maybe, it's time you told your version. That hit harder than I expected. Maddie walked over and dropped a folder in my lap. Already ahead of you, she said. Everything you've built. Everything they've tried to twist. It's all in here. I opened it. Inside were photos of my early shop. Contracts signed. The patents. The milestones. The first check from a defense contractor. Letters from clients. Even a testimonial from a disabled vet who used our outdoor products and said, "This bench doesn't rust." Just like the guy who made it. I smiled. This is your story, Maddie said. Not theirs. So I made a decision. That night, I posted on my business page. A long, clear, humble but firm letter. For years, I worked in silence. I built Oakline in the shadows of family members who thought value only came in stocks and suits. This company was never meant to impress anyone. It was meant to solve a problem I saw every day in my line of work. We developed a way to make metal last longer without destroying the environment, and it worked. Now, someone close to me bet against that success, tried to destroy it, and when it backfired, demanded I tear it all down to save them. I said no. That doesn't make me cruel. That makes me careful. If you've ever been the quiet one, the underestimated one, the person in the corner doing the work while others took the credit, I see you. And if you've ever had to choose between preserving your peace or pleasing your blood, I know what choice hurts less in the long run. I hit publish. Didn't tag anyone. Didn't drag names. But people knew. By morning, it had over 80,000 shares. Clients sent notes. Industry folks sent admiration. Even a few former classmates reached out and said, "I wish I'd backed you sooner." One message came from a number I hadn't saved. "Layla. I hope it was worth it." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I blocked the number. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Because I wasn't trying to win anymore. I already had. 3 days after the post, my dad showed up unannounced at the shop. No text, no call, just his old Buick crunching gravel like he owned the land. He stepped out in a faded golf polo, eyes tired, shoulders slumped like someone who'd lost more than just money. "Got a minute?" he asked. I nodded but didn't stop what I was doing, tightening a railing bracket for a vet center downtown. I finished the weld before looking up. "I read your post," he said. "Didn't expect to see myself in it. You weren't named. Didn't need to be," he muttered. "It hurt. So did 30 years of being the family joke," I replied. He looked around the shop like he'd never really seen it before. The machines. The patent plaques. The worn stool Maddie used when she brought me coffee during late nights. "This place," he said, voice cracking. "I always thought it was small time." "It's mine," I said. "And it's real." He nodded slowly. Then came the line I never thought I'd hear. "I was wrong, Teddy. Not dramatic. Not tearful. Just a man trying to rebuild a bridge he spent years burning." "I know," I said. "But knowing isn't the same as changing." He left quietly. That was enough. A week later, Maddie and I sat on the porch drinking coffee when a certified letter arrived. No lawyer stuff this time. It was from my mother. Handwritten. 5 pages. Apologies tucked between excuses, folded inside. "We didn't know. And we were proud, just never said it right." She ended it with, "You've built something beautiful, Teddy. We see that now." Maddie read it once, then slid it back into the envelope. "Doesn't mean you have to let them in," she said. "Forgiveness isn't admission." And she was right. I didn't hate them. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done playing quiet. Done dimming down to keep the peace. The family group chat stayed silent. Layla never reached out again. Trent posted a LinkedIn update about pivoting to consulting. Meanwhile, Oakline signed a contract with a green tech firm. Maddie designed the new R&D garden out back. My shop grew, but we didn't move. Didn't upgrade. Just lived better. Lighter. Every weld was steadier. Every night quieter. No spotlight. Just freedom. 6 months later, I stood in a conference room in Denver, polished floors, glass walls, people in suits who now shook my hand first. Oakline had just finalized a partnership with an international infrastructure firm. I was there to sign the deal. $20 million over 5 years. As I penned the last page, the lead engineer, gray-haired, sharp eyes, asked, "You ever imagined this when you were welding staircases in your garage?" I smiled. Every damn day. That night I flew home. Maddie met me at the airport in muddy boots and a grin that made the runway lights blur. "They called," she said, holding out her phone. "Your parents." I read the text. Saw the announcement. "We're proud of you. Always were. Hope that still matters." I stared at it for a long time. Then deleted it. Not cruelly. Just finally, cleanly. Because I didn't build all this for their approval. I built it so no one could mistake silence for weakness ever again. And I had everything I needed right there in her hands, in that driveway, in my name on that contract. The best part about freedom? It doesn't make noise. It creeps in. It shows up on slow mornings when no one's demanding anything. When the air smells like fresh cut steel and coffee, and Maddie's humming while labeling test samples. That's when I first felt it, not relief, not triumph, just quiet. And damn, did that quiet feel earned. By then, Oakline wasn't just surviving, it was moving. We'd finalized another licensing deal with an EU manufacturer specializing in wind turbine parts. Our formula held up against salt air and temperature swings. I knew that because Maddie had been running the data herself. We stood in the lab one afternoon, reviewing the results. She flipped a clipboard toward me. 74% improvement in lifespan over the next competitor. "You know what that means? That we're annoying the hell out of legacy suppliers? That we're about to be acquired, she said, grinning. I froze. Wait, you want to sell? No, she said. But someone's going to try. And when they do, we need to be ready. The next morning, the emails came in. One from an industrial coatings conglomerate. Another from a defense-adjacent firm with a suspiciously vague name. And one from a VC group with direct ties to Trent's old hedge fund. I laughed out loud when I saw it. Maddie didn't. She sat down slowly, brows pulled tight. They're circling. I nodded. Like vultures. So we did what we always did, we got ahead of it. Darren helped us tighten ownership clauses, revise employee stock options, and lock down every patent like it was Fort Knox. We weren't playing defense, we were securing the future. That week I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, a note from Trent. You won. You'll always say you didn't want to. But you did. And I see that now. I hope one day I forget the sound of you walking away. Because it still keeps me up. I read it once. Then twice. Then threw it in the fire pit behind the shop. Not out of hate. Just to let go. The next morning, Maddie found me welding a new test bench. She handed me a thermos. Burn another bridge? She teased. I smirked. Cleared space for a better view. She kissed my cheek, and I swear that moment was worth more than every offer sitting in my inbox. 2 months later, I got an invite I never expected. An awards gala. Not one of those cheesy local things with finger foods and plastic trophies, this was national. The American Materials Science and Innovation Summit. Black tie. High profile. Sponsored by a defense conglomerate, a renewable energy coalition, and a couple of research universities I once couldn't afford to apply to. They were honoring Oakline. Specifically me. Inventor of the Year. I stared at the email so long my coffee went cold. Maddie peeked over my shoulder. Let me guess you're trying to figure out how to say no without sounding rude. I'm trying to figure out how I got here, I said. She grinned. By welding your fingers together and reading metallurgy journals at 2 a.m., that's how. I accepted the invite. Not for the applause. For the record. Let them put my name in the books. Let them write it in ink. The night of the event, I wore a suit that Maddie picked, dark navy, simple. No tie. Just clean lines and calloused hands. I stood in a ballroom full of men with smoother voices and glossier shoes. But when they said my name, Teddy Blake, founder of Oakline Materials, pioneering environmental metal treatment solutions, the whole room stood. I didn't expect that. I walked to the stage. Took the mic. And for once in my life, I didn't talk about specs or processes. I talked about value. I built something because I got tired of watching good metal go bad, I said. And because I was tired of being told that working with your hands meant you weren't thinking with your head. Applause again. Not polite. Real. Then I said something I hadn't planned. I spent most of my life being the practical one. The one who fixes stuff, makes things, shows up. That used to feel like a consolation prize. Now, it feels like a blueprint. When I stepped off stage, 2 execs pulled me aside. One offered to triple our current valuation in a buyout. The other wanted to license our process globally. And standing just a few feet away from all that money and respect? My parents. Uninvited. Mom in a dress she probably hadn't worn in years. Dad in an old blazer that didn't fit anymore. Both of them with expressions I didn't recognize. Not judgment. Not pride. Regret. I didn't walk over. Didn't smile. I just nodded once and walked past. Because closure isn't about doors. It's about knowing which ones not to open again. 2 weeks after the gala, Maddie and I hosted a barbecue. Not a flex. Not a celebration. Just something simple: pulled pork, cornbread, metal tables out in the field behind the shop, Edison lights strung between trees. We invited our crew, a few local contractors, 2 old professors who once told me to never let materials science intimidate me. And Becca, of course, who brought her girlfriend and the world's flakiest biscuits. It felt like a life. One I hadn't realized I was allowed to have. At one point, I stepped away to get more ice and saw Maddie talking with one of our interns, a 20-year-old welding student named Eli, eyes wide, hands twitchy, the kind of kid who builds engines for fun and worries no one will ever take him seriously because he failed algebra twice. He was telling her about a side project he was working on, some kind of modular bridge panel. I watched Maddie nod, fully locked in, like he was pitching a NASA mission. When he walked away, beaming, I said, "You just gave him enough confidence to last the whole year." She shrugged. "Someone did that for you once." I smiled. "Yeah. You." The next morning, I walked through the shop before anyone else arrived. Still smelled like oil and grit and warm steel. I opened the R&D file cabinet. Dug out the old notes from my first formula test, the one that cracked and bubbled because I got the curing ratio wrong. The paper was warped. Ink smudged. Failure in physical form. I tacked it to the wall, next to the latest patent. One day, I want someone to see the distance between those two sheets of paper and realize you don't have to start with polish. You just have to start. Midweek, Darren called with news. Oakline had passed final review for a $2 million federal research grant. Maddie and I danced in the kitchen for a full 60 seconds before she made me sign the acceptance letter. And that night, lying in bed, she asked, "Do you miss them?" I didn't pretend not to know who she meant. I stared at the ceiling. Sometimes I missed the idea of them. But not the reality. The version I kept trying to please was a shadow I didn't need to chase. She nodded. "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us." And I meant it. Not just because we'd won, but because we built something that could never be stolen, shorted, or burned down. Fall rolled in with golden light, and cold mornings the kind that made the metal in the shop groan when it expanded. Oakline was humming. We'd hired 3 new engineers, expanded our testing lab, and added a prototype division. Maddie ran like a precision general. But it wasn't just business that came knocking. One Friday morning, I got a letter from my old high school. It was an invitation. They were building a new STEM wing and wanted to name the materials lab after me. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. Maddie walked in, reading over my shoulder. "You okay?" "They used to give me detention for skipping math to hang out in the shop room," I said. She grinned. "Now they want to put your name on the door. You gonna do it?" "I think I have to," I said. "For the kids in that building who think welding is just Plan B." The dedication was set for mid-November. Small ceremony. School board, some teachers, and unfortunately a list of community leaders. Layla was one of them. She worked in public outreach now. Rebranded herself. New hair. New fake humility. Same razor smile. I nearly backed out. But Maddie said something that stopped me cold. "Why give her the power to make you small again?" So I went. The shop teacher, a grizzled legend named Mr. Cord, opened the event. "We've had a lot of students come through here. Only one turned rust into revenue." Laughter. Applause. I walked up to the mic, took a breath. "I failed 2 classes in this building," I said. "But I never failed to show up." That got a chuckle. I wasn't the kid who knew what he wanted to be. I was the kid who knew what he could build, and figured that was enough. I glanced toward the back. Layla was there. Face tight. Arms crossed. I finished my speech without looking at her again. Afterward, kids asked questions. Parents shook my hand. Layla approached last. "Teddy," she said. "That was impressive." I nodded. "Thanks." She hesitated. "You look good." "Happy." "I am." More hesitation. Then, "I just wish it hadn't ended this way. That you didn't shut us all out." I looked at her carefully. "You didn't just out me. You tried to profit from my failure. That's not something you patch with small talk and a public smile." She blinked. "I was scared." "I was too," I said. "But I didn't bet against my own family to feel safe." She didn't respond. Just looked down, then away, then walked off. I didn't watch her go. I turned to a kid who'd been waiting nearby, maybe 16, braces, oil under his nails. "You got a question?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "How do you know you weren't wasting your time?" I smiled. "I didn't," I said. "But I knew I wasn't wasting myself." 2 months after the school ceremony, the landline rang. Not the office phone. The shop phone. We kept it mostly for older clients and the occasional contractor who still faxed quotes. Maddie answered while I was calibrating a pressure sprayer. She looked confused. Then handed me the phone. "It's your dad." I hesitated. The last time we'd spoken in person, he'd apologized. Briefly. The time before that, he tried to get me to sell my life's work for his son-in-law's debt. "Teddy," he said. "I'm not calling to talk about the past." I waited. "I'm calling to ask if I can visit. Alone." I didn't say yes. I said, why? Because I'd like to see what I missed. 3 days later, he pulled up in the same tired Buick, dressed in weekend khakis and a jacket too light for the wind. No blazer. No paperwork. Just age and effort. He stepped into the shop like it was a museum. Looked up at the new gantry system, the custom rigs, the clean rows of labeled compounds. His eyes landed on a framed newspaper clipping from the gala. You really did all this, he said. I really did. He was quiet a long time. I always thought you were wasting your potential, he said slowly. But I think you were just refusing to waste your life. He turned to me, hands in his pockets. I said some terrible things. So did your mother. And I don't know what we can fix. But I'm trying to stop pretending I didn't fail you. I didn't offer forgiveness. I offered a chair. We sat for an hour. No accusations. No plans. Just updates. He told me Mom was seeing a counselor. That Layla had moved to another city. That Trent was reportedly working for a startup no one had heard of. He doesn't talk to us anymore, Dad admitted. I said, we have that in common. He laughed softly, like someone remembering how. Before he left, he looked around the shop one more time. Your grandmother would have been proud. That one hit deep. She was the only one who ever looked at me and saw something more than, fix it, Teddy? She believed in you from the start, he said. Then she had better vision than most. He nodded. That's for damn sure. He didn't hug me. Didn't cry. But as he walked back to the Buick, I saw his hand linger on the shop's doorframe. Like he wanted to hold on just a little longer. And I let him. Because sometimes healing isn't a hug. Sometimes, it's showing them what they can't rewrite. The first snow came early that year, just a light dusting, enough to frost the shop roof and silence the gravel under our boots. Maddie and I spent the morning reorganizing the back office. We found old receipts, notes scribbled on sandwich wrappers, and a half-melted flash drive I hadn't touched in 4 years. When I plugged it in, it was like opening a time capsule. Early prototypes. Failed tests. Maddie's original logo sketches. A folder named Someday. Inside were mock-ups for a community training program. Welding. Materials handling. Sustainability. I'd forgotten I ever drafted it. Maddie leaned over my shoulder. You were planning this all along? I think I was dreaming out loud. She grinned. Let's make it real. That week, we met with the local technical college. By January, we'd partnered to open Oakline Academy, an apprentice pipeline for kids who wanted to build with their hands and brains. First cohort, 10 students. All under 20. All of them walked into our shop like it was NASA. One kid, Rafi, stood by the CNC and whispered, "This is the coolest place I've ever been." I looked at Maddie. She was already tearing up. Sometimes legacy isn't about who knows your name, it's about what you pass forward. Meanwhile, Oakline's licensing revenue hit an all-time high. We'd officially become the preferred coatings partner for 2 defense-adjacent manufacturing firms. One of them flew us out to inspect a facility. They offered to build a custom lab in our name. Maddie joked that if we kept saying no, they'd just name it after the dog. We didn't need more. But we did say yes to one thing, a foundation. We set it up quietly. Funded by Oakline. Mission, scholarships, tools, and resources for first-gen tradespeople and science students. We named it after my grandmother. Her initials carved into the seal. The woman who left me the land everyone else thought was a burden. It had become a beacon. One night, Maddie and I sat on the porch with cocoa in hand. Snowflakes drifting down, dogs snoring at our feet. You ever think about what it would have been like? She asked. If they'd believed in you from the start? I thought for a long moment. No, I said. Because then I might have built something for them. Not for me. She smiled and leaned into my shoulder. The wind picked up, and the house creaked, just a little, old beams flexing, holding strong. Same as always. And I realized something I hadn't before. I'd spent years chasing approval. But in the end, I built freedom. 3 weeks later, I stood alone in the shop, just before dawn. Lights off, machines asleep, the kind of silence you only get when the work is done for the day but your mind's still grinding. I wasn't thinking about the next contract or patent filing. I was thinking about where it all started. I walked past the CNC rig I couldn't afford 5 years ago. Past the weld table where I burned through my first prototype, cursing under my breath while Maddie passed me cold coffee and encouragement. past the wall where we kept our firsts, first check, first patent, first company card. Then I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Inside, buried under old test samples and a cracked caliper, was a faded birthday card. My dad had given it to me when I turned 25. I'd shoved it away back then because it felt like an obligation gift, one of those generic, "We're proud of you" messages people write when they don't know what else to say. But I opened it now. And inside was a note I'd forgotten existed. "Teddy, I don't understand what you're trying to build, but I hope one day I will. Love, Dad." No grand gestures. No wisdom. Just that. I said it back gently. Not out of sentiment, but respect for the man I was then, and the one I'd fought like hell to become. The next morning, Maddie and I met with a team from a global nonprofit. They wanted to distribute our coding tech to rural infrastructure programs overseas: roads, bridges, water systems. Places that didn't need marketing. Just durability. We said yes. No press. No contracts with gold seals. Just action. That night, I stepped outside to lock the gate, and across the yard, I saw something that stopped me cold. My mom. Standing at the edge of the gravel in a wool coat, holding a plastic container. Cookies. The kind she used to make when I was sick. I walked up slowly. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not fragile, just quiet. "I didn't call," she said softly. "I figured you'd say no." I didn't answer. Just waited. She offered the container like a peace flag. "I saw the post about the foundation. Your grandmother would have loved that." "Yeah," I said. "She saw the blueprint before anyone else did." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I was wrong, Teddy. I followed the loud ones. And I should have listened to the steady one." We stood in the cold. Breath clouds between us. Nothing dramatic. Then she said, "I don't want to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to learn." I didn't take the cookies. Not yet. But I didn't walk away either. Because this wasn't about reconciliation. This was about truth finding its voice even if it cracked on the way out. 3 months later, I stood on a stage that wasn't built for people like me. Not Ivy League. Not polished. Just practical. The Global Sustainable Engineering Summit had flown Maddie and me out to London to present Oakline's rural infrastructure rollout: 20 villages across 5 countries using our corrosion-proof tech to build bridges, water systems, and load-bearing structures that wouldn't rot out in 5 years. A tall guy in a tailored vest introduced me with the words, "Inventor, builder, and the mind behind one of the most disruptive advances in sustainable metalwork of the last decade." 10 years ago, I was bending rebar behind a barn, hoping my welds would hold. Now, I was speaking to a room full of people who used to look right past me. But that wasn't the moment. The moment came after the presentation, in the exhibit hall, when a wiry kid with calloused hands and a nervous energy I recognized instantly approached me holding a folder of sketches. "Mr. Blake," he said, "I followed your work. Oakline changed how I thought about building. My professors told me it was too messy, too unconventional. But your process, it gave me permission to try anyway." He handed me a sketch of a modular flood barrier. Not polished. Not perfect. But possible. I looked at him and saw myself 20 years old, covered in dust, pitching ideas to people who didn't even look up. I took the folder. "Let me introduce you to Maddie," I said. "She runs our pilot design team." His eyes lit up. That was it. That was the legacy, not my name on a building. Not a balance sheet. But the next builder stepping forward, not asking for permission. That night, Maddie and I sat on the hotel balcony overlooking the Thames. Lights flickering across the river. City buzz humming low. She leaned into me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I think I finally am." I pulled a folded note from my jacket. Not from Trent. Not from Layla. Not even from my dad. It was from Becca. Mailed to the shop while we were gone. "I saw what you built. Not the company. The life. You stopped trying to earn a seat at their table. And built your own. And now everyone else is asking for an invite." I smiled. No anger. No need to reply. Because Becca was right. I'd stopped auditioning. I'd stopped shrinking. I'd stopped begging to be seen and turned that silence into steel. Into something that lasted.